Welcome to my show, Confession of a Futurist with Sanjiv Goyal. Every Wednesday at 3:30 p.m., only on Radio Zindagi. We invite mavericks and futurists to talk about their journey, their secrets, and their predictions for the future. Our next guest is a very special friend of mine. His name is Sridhar. He's co-founder of Elemental Machines. And we'll find out what is that Elemental Machine is about. He has also co-founded a company called Misfit. Interestingly, yes, it's Misfit. You heard it correctly. And that company he co-founded with Sonny Wu and John Scully, the former CEO of Apple and Pepsi, if you don't know. Misfit got acquired by Puzzle Group. We will talk to him about how that journey was for him. Health and fitness market has significantly grown in last decade, but COVID has completely disrupted it. Now we have new Apple Watch, which can even measure your oxygen, your blood oxygen. How cool is that? I used to dream about such devices 15 years ago when I used to sit with my friend Dave Asprey in a coffee shop in Palo Alto. And now it is real, 16 years late, but that's okay. Almost everyone in my network measures sleeps. The global fitness tracker market, yes, just the fitness tracker market, is currently $30.41 billion. Yes, $30.4 billion. It is expected to be 91.98, yes, close to $100 billion by 2027. That's by Fortune Business Insight. You are welcome to go and check their website. They have amazing stats. But what that means to us as a human, if we track everything about us, is it going to change our life? So let's talk to our next guest, a futurist, a dreamer, an engineer. Sridhar, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Sanjeev. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So Sridhar, my first question is very simple. Do you have any confession for our audience?
I have many, but in the scope of the technology sphere, one of the big lessons that I've learned over the years, and I'm happy to say that I can confess it now because I learned from it and we're acting upon it, is that as engineers, scientists, and technologists, we often think about how the world can be in the future. And we think about it so deeply that oftentimes we think that's where everybody should be living. And I'm completely blanking. I forget who actually said this, but the quote was, the future is already here, but it's not evenly distributed. And I'm completely blanking on who said that. And the problem with that future not being evenly distributed is often, folks who are working in the technology area make the somewhat false assumption that what we think is a technological advance and what we think the world needs is often quite a bit into the future as compared to what the market can support.
Absolutely. See, a lot of time we are not ready with what future is.
Right.
And it's not just the audience. It's a lot of time the technology is partially ready, not fully ready. So you and me both know we lived through that, especially last 2 decades has really changed the world.
Yes.
And last 12 months, we saw how technology is really changing our world.
Yep.
So question I have is very simple for you. Today, when we talk about sensors, because to me, fitness tracker is a kind of a sensor.
Absolutely.
And you are deeply involved in sensors and that technology for more than almost 2 decades, roughly.
Yeah.
Where are we going? And if we start tracking everything about us and everything about our movement, what kind of world will that be? I mean, I know it's a loaded question, but as a consumer, I'm really baffled. is it going in my interest, or is it creating more challenges for me?
Well, like any technology, these kinds of platforms can be used for good or evil. So that's the sort of blanket statement. But what's interesting is the ability to measure and track everything has existed for quite a long time and has not been in the public eye. So for example, I was at CES, Consumer Electronics Show, probably 7-8 years ago, maybe even a decade ago. And we had the fortune of getting some behind the scenes tours of some of the casinos, and specifically the IT infrastructure, and more specifically, all of the different cameras that are not only in the casino, but outside and linked with other casinos. So what was very interesting was we could see from the control room or security room, we could track an individual, what they are playing at the poker table. If there's any misbehavior, that person can be followed by video across an entire fleet of cameras, not only through the casino, outside into the street, with linked shared cameras into a neighboring casino as well. And you can track that person everywhere. And this was routine commonplace a decade ago. And what people don't realize is the ability to track and measure everything, whether it's on the body, like fitness trackers, other wearables, or whether it's inside buildings and facilities, or anywhere. That technology has existed for a very long time, and the idea of being anonymous really hasn't existed, and only now.
So that's not my question, Sridhar. Anonymous is fine. We all understand it, that we have to give a little bit of our privacy to get some value out of it.
Yep.
We all understand it. And we all understand the value of collaboration, where we are sharing the data for greater good. COVID is the biggest example where we are able to, drug discoveries completely exploited this notion of collaboration, where almost every single party on planet collaborated, even competitors collaborated. Mm-hmm. Question is, as a fitness tracker, let's take the example of fitness tracker and the basic sensors which you and me are familiar of. Now even oximeter, right? So we can capture the oxygen level, blood oxygen level, where we can do so many good things, greater things. So where our world is going, that is my question from you. And will every single person will be connected? And if we are going to be connected, how are we going to create a better world, which we have been promised so many times by the technology?
Yeah, that's thank you for clarifying. So the basic fact is that a lot of the technologies for measuring your health, measuring your biologics, your biomarkers, they've been around, again, for decades. And the issue has been not the technology, but the economics and the regulatory impact. So the barriers to mass adoption haven't really been technology-based. It's been economic and regulatory. Now, over time, those barriers are coming down because the cost of manufacturing, the cost of data, all that is working out. And so let's go to where some of the some of the people that we read about, where they're going. So Elon Musk is a great example. He's going to the place where can you actually pull thoughts out of people's brains? And Neuralink, exactly. And the flip side, can you then put thoughts into people's brains? That's the natural, reading and writing.
But that's almost planting the thoughts which we don't have, or planting the knowledge we don't have. So, which is, I'm not sure how far we take it, but let's see, future will tell. But yes, that's an extreme example.
That's an extreme example, but we're not that far away from that kind of capability.
It's like all the Star Wars movies.
Yeah, I mean, you have the ability to be able to read your mental thoughts, and you can see this with I think there's some human-computer interfaces where you can control a game and a mouse and whatever with your mind. That's been around. That's been around 25 years ago when I was in college.
Yep.
So that all exists. But what's interesting is at what point does this become intrusive, and at what point does it become an augmentation? And I think one of the first areas you're going to see in mass adoption and mass support for this is folks who have lost certain abilities. So folks who have maybe lost their sight, or folks who, and you've already seen with folks who've lost their hearing. So augmentation to get back to kind of baseline physiological performance is one that is going to be very well accepted by the ethical side of things. So again, the interesting thing about us being from the technology side is barriers aren't really technological, and that's it's economic, ethical, and regulatory. And what I do see us the world moving towards is an area where you can augment people's abilities. And if you take ethics and economics and all this to the side, we have the ability to have superhuman powers today. We have exoskeletons that allow you to lift 10 times what you can lift. So all of these technologies exist, and the problem is you can also use this for nefarious things, like 10 times better hearing, you can eavesdrop on somebody. 10 times better sight, you can spy on somebody. 10 times
or
better
extra vision, you can see in the other room what's going on.
Exactly.
So, Sridhar, that's a sci-fi thing. So let's talk about the real world today where you and me live in, right?
Mm-hmm.
It took us 15 years to build the watch, which I saw the prototype in 2004, 2005. For real, Dave and me, we used to talk about this watch company called Basis. That company got acquired by Intel. We know about that. They had this watch in 2004, 2005, where we could do 5 biomarkers basically. And we could track, even the oximeter was there at that time. We could measure skin conductance, temperature, you name it. But it took us 14 years to bring it to the production. So we know a lot of time as a consumer, we look at, its technology is moving so fast. So let's talk about the sensor work you are doing today in elemental machines. Can you share a little bit about with our audience, what is the problem you are trying to solve?
Yes. So Elemental Machines is a IoT company, Internet of Things, connected sensors, and we are enabling, broadly speaking, smart buildings, but buildings with a purpose, and specifically to help accelerate how the biotech and pharma industry accelerate their work. So think smart labs, smart clinics, smart factories, this kind of thing. And I can get into some history as to how the company came about, but when we started the company about 5 years ago, I recognized a need for the life sciences, biotech, pharma, synthetic biology, all these.
Yeah, we talked about it when I was in your office last year, and I was pretty amazed because we tried to solve that problem ourselves, but it was so complicated. We said, it's very hard to solve it because we both know it's not just the hardware, it's the combination of hardware and software, and really building it for unique use cases, because the same thing as a fitness tracker, it's not only solving one problem, it's solve multitude of problems, but where do you put attention?
Yes, exactly. And I think you hit the nail on the head in that it's the integration of the hardware, the communication, and the cloud and the analytics and all of that. The reason why we're going after the biotech industry is I felt that the industry needed the technology and the tools to really invent and discover new drugs, new therapies, and new vaccines faster. And 5-6 years ago, when the idea was starting, if you worked in the industry, you understood it. But if you didn't, it seemed like a crazy idea. Yet, if you look at the last 12 months, what has the media been focused on? It is how do we get the biotech and pharma industry to invent and develop vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics faster? And once you have them, how do you get them under cold storage conditions to the end user? So the media finally has put a spotlight on what we've been doing, but the problem has always existed. It was never in the spotlight. So that's what we're doing.
So, in our audience, there are a lot of people who are futurists too, and they are looking for ideas and suggestion how they can improve the quality of life. So question I have for you is, when we talk about fitness tracker or any kind of tracker, how can I extrapolate some meaningful data? Especially in today's time, mental wellness and alertness are two very critical elements. Right? We saw so many accidents happen on the road because people are not alert.
Yes.
And it's not about your safety only, it's the safety of everybody around. Second is mental wellness is becoming a huge issue. how can we predict our alertness and mental wellness level using fitness trackers? Is it possible with some level of accuracy?
Yeah, there's definitely a correlation. And one of the things that we had done at my last company, Misfit, was looked at sleep patterns and how often you literally toss and turn and move in your sleep, correlate that with different stages of sleep. And you go through the early stage and then deep REM sleep and so on and so forth. And so what we were able to demonstrate is that it is possible to correlate different stages of sleep with your physical movements in bed. Now, we augmented our product line with a sleep sensor. We actually had a sensor you can put on the bed, under the mattress, and it would monitor your breathing and your heart rate. And you put those together, the more dimensions you measure, the much clearer picture you have of your sleep quality. And I think we were a little early to the game, because now there's many companies who have recognized the importance of sleep and mental wellness. And there's clinical studies that have been done, and there's published data that indicates that not only sleep, but also your diet, how late you sleep, how late you eat. We were talking with one of the Big 10 pharma. They wanted to know when people ate dinner and the difference between the time of eating and the time of sleeping, especially people who have sleep apnea. Those types of sleep issues can get exacerbated if you go to sleep on a full stomach versus an empty stomach. So what we're seeing is it's not just sleep, it's what you eat and obviously your exercise. And so you start putting more and more dimensions together. Each of these have different kinds of sensor input. And now you have a global set of data, and that's what folks like Apple's healthcare initiative and Google's healthcare initiative a few years ago was all around, is how do we collect this full context of data and find the correlations across multiple variables. That's how you're going to get the holistic picture and correlate that with mental health and so on and so forth.
Interesting. So that's great. So since the market is growing, it's good for all of us. We will be able to understand the human health better. We will be able to understand where are we, and hopefully with the connectedness we are getting, we will be able to understand the kind of congestion we are driving, because whenever you are in traffic congestion, you really want to understand how the things are around you. And hopefully it will be another data point for a company like Tesla, not only see what is going on outside the car, see what's happening inside the car too. Because if we don't have people alert, they can make more grave mistakes, which normally you don't predict or you don't plan for.
Well, there were, I want to say even Mercedes or BMW, they were exploring two things. I think it was BMW. They were trying to correlate somebody wearing a continuous glucose monitor from diabetes with their driving ability to drive. So if their glucose goes too low, you have a risk of passing out. And I've known people who have passed out and gone off the road and had accidents because their glucose dropped. And so automobile companies had a very distinct interest in this. And so what you're seeing is you're seeing consumer products, car companies get interested in health because the health of their user, their customer, and their stakeholder is going to affect how they interact with their product, in this case, a vehicle. There's life and death issues that can happen.
Yeah, the big thing I wanted to talk about here is, Sridhar, the challenge we have as a human. We think we live in isolation. So when I'm healthy, it is only impacting my own life. When I'm alert, it's only impacting my life, or other way around. We are also connected. We don't realize, even with a stranger. That's how I believe it. So understanding that is very important, because we are getting into the new age, and the age where things are very different than what it is today. The complexities of our world has changed dramatically. We have added almost 5 billion more people in last 100 years, and we are going to add 3 billion more in next 30 years. So it's changing dramatically, and I'm not scaring everyone, but this is a big problem. Unless we build our infrastructure, better unless we really understand this connectedness through the infrastructure, through the sensors, as well as, of course, at the more spiritual level. We will not be able to create a better world. Like sustainability problem, all these problems cannot be eliminated, but can be reduced dramatically. In fact, I would like to talk about a book I'm reading recently. Somebody sent me this book. It's called Live Wired by David Eagleman. In fact, there is a documentary on Netflix. He produced it. Brilliant documentary around how our brain works, how we think. So I'm becoming a student of two things. And we both are engineers. We can relate to these two words. One is curiosity, and second is systematic thinking. And I honestly believe with these two things, we can solve so many phenomenal problems. What is your take on that, Sridhar?
Yeah, it mirrors very well with the scientific method. You take a unknown complex issue and you break it down and systematically go through this. But if you look at sort of how the brain works, the mind takes in a tremendous amount of information. Its primary goal is to eliminate as much information as it possibly can and hold on to what it considers to be the most useful for survival, broadly speaking. And there are ways to model how you think. And certainly, given both of our backgrounds coming from India, there's yogis back in the day who were able to come up with techniques for harnessing the mind's power to focus and all this. But in more modern technological terms, methods, you have ways of reading brainwaves. I think there's a company out of Toronto, if I remember correctly, called Muse, that makes a headset that you can use for meditation. And
there is another one, Brenify. I know them very well. Yeah. We did some work with them. So.
Yeah, exactly. And so
I can drive a car by my thoughts for real.
Exactly. And the issue of getting the data off of your body, getting the data off of the environment, the sensing part, is not the hard part, nor is it analyzing it. What the hard part is actually deploying it to the mass market in an application that actually makes sense. It's one thing to do something for fun and whatever, but it's a whole other thing to have the reliability so you can drive a car with your thoughts and not get into an accident. And that reliability aspect requires not just technology, it also requires the human being to be trained and educated in a way where they can use the technology well. And I think that's where so many new tech fails, is that they haven't incorporated the human component, the psychological component, and the training component. So,
Sridhar, any last advice for our audience?
Yes, if I circle back to the very first question you asked me about the confession, don't believe all the media hype about all the wonderful things that are going to be up and coming and all that. I mean, I think it was...
No way.
No. What I mean, I think it was Peter Thiel who said, something about we were promised flying cars, all we have 140 characters. The media is very good at pointing the direction. The media is not very good at telling you when we're going to get it. And so that's the delta that as an entrepreneur, you need to bridge between the promise of where we're going and what the market is ready to adopt. And I think that's my final thoughts, is that the direction is good, but practicality is what makes a sustainable business.
Love it, Sridhar. Thank you very, very much for your time today. I really enjoyed. Thank you very much, everyone.
Great. Thank you.